The invitation arrived on thick cream paper, gold embossed with a family crest. The Blackwood Family Annual Gathering. It read in elegant script. Beneath it, a handwritten note from my mother. Sarah, please try to dress appropriately this year. I traced my fingers over the embossing, remembering how much these invitations used to mean to me. How I'd spent years trying to prove I belonged at these gatherings, where success was measured in stock portfolios and real estate holdings. Now, at 34, I just felt tired. Tired of the games, the judgments, the constant need to justify my existence to people who'd written me off long ago. My brother Marcus had always been the golden child. Harvard Business School, perfect wife, perfect kids, and now running our father's investment firm. I was the disappointment, the one who'd walked away from a promising position at Goldman Sachs to start my own venture. Throwing away your future, Dad had called it. They didn't know about the late nights, the risks, the careful planning. They didn't know about the offshore accounts or the quiet investments that had turned my initial savings into something beyond their imagination. I'd kept it all hidden, letting them believe what they wanted to believe. I smoothed my blazer and checked my reflection one last time. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like the eager-to-please daughter they remembered. Sharp suit, perfectly styled hair, quiet confidence in her eyes. I slipped a small USB drive into my pocket, my insurance policy for what I knew was coming. The family estate loomed ahead as my car pulled through the iron gates. 3 stories of old money and older judgments. Marcus's Range Rover was already parked out front, along with an assortment of luxury vehicles belonging to various aunts, uncles, and cousins. Sarah. My mother's voice carried across the marble foyer as I stepped inside. She air-kissed my cheek, already frowning at my choice of outfit. We were beginning to wonder if you'd show. Wouldn't miss it, I replied smoothly. The living room was already full. The usual crowd of Blackwoods and their spouses, all engaged in their favorite pastime, comparing successes and subtly undermining each other. Marcus stood by the fireplace, holding court with our cousins. He looked up as I entered, that familiar smirk playing across his face. Little sister, we were just talking about you. I bet you were. I smiled politely, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. All good things, I hope. Actually, he said, voice carrying just enough to draw attention. We were discussing your recent situation. The startup? Dad mentioned you've been trying to secure additional funding. And there it was. The trap he'd been waiting to spring. I'd been expecting this, had planned for it, even. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his leather armchair, while Mom suddenly became very interested in adjusting a flower arrangement. Is that true? Aunt Margaret peered at me over her glasses. Sarah, dear, there's no shame in admitting when it's time to come home. The family business always has room for. She's broke, Marcus cut in, unable to contain himself. Aren't you, Sarah? That's why you've been avoiding the country club, turning down charity gala invitations. Dad says you even sold your condo. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. This was his moment, the one he'd been orchestrating for months. Marcus, the responsible one, finally proving what a liability his wild sister had become. Poor thing, he continued, voice dripping with fake sympathy. She's lost everything. But don't worry, sis. I'm sure we can find you something entry-level at the firm. Maybe in HR? I took a slow sip of champagne, letting the moment stretch. Years ago, this would have destroyed me. Now it just felt small. Actually, I said quietly. I've been meaning to share some news. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the ancient projector Dad insisted on keeping in the living room. Since we're all here. Marcus's smirk faltered slightly as the projection flickered to life on the wall. What are you doing? Showing you my situation, I replied calmly. The first page of my offshore account statement appeared, numbers clear and impossible to misinterpret. $50 million in liquid assets, and that was just the beginning. The silence in the room shifted from smug to stunned. I could hear someone's champagne glass shatter in the background. That's not possible, Marcus stammered. Your company, the funding, failed. I finished for him. That's what you wanted everyone to believe, isn't it? What you've been telling the family. Interesting theory. Wrong, but interesting. I clicked to the next slide. Company valuations, property holdings, investment portfolios. 5 years of careful growth and strategic planning laid bare. You see, while you were all writing me off as the family failure, I was building something real. And unlike the family firm, which lost 30% of its value last quarter. Yes, Marcus, I saw the reports. My ventures have been quietly thriving. Dad stood up so quickly, his newspaper fell to the floor. Sarah, what are you saying? I'm saying, I met his eyes steadily, that your children took very different paths. One followed the rules, played it safe, relied on the family name. The other built an empire from scratch. And now I'm worth more than the entire family business combined. Marcus lunged for the projector, but I was faster. I switched to the final slide, a pending acquisition offer for his precious firm. His face went from red to white as he read the company name at the bottom of the letter. My company name. You, he choked out. This is some kind of trick. No trick, I said softly. Just good business. Isn't that what you always taught us, Dad? Buy low, sell high, and never let emotions cloud your judgment. The room erupted in chaos. Aunt Margaret was fanning herself with a magazine. Uncle George was frantically typing on his phone, probably checking stock prices. And Marcus just stood there, champagne glass dangling forgotten from his fingers, staring at the evidence of everything he'd gotten wrong. Mom stepped forward, her society smile cracking at the edges. Darling, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked simply. Or would you have assumed I was lying, like you believed everything Marcus said about my failure? The truth hung in the air like smoke, impossible to wave away. Years of dismissal, of snide comments at family dinners, of being the cautionary tale they whispered about at country club brunches, all of it shattered by a single bank statement. I gathered my things, ready to leave them with their shattered illusions. But before I reached the door, I turned back one last time. Oh, and Marcus? About that entry-level position? I think you might be needing it more than me. The board votes on the acquisition next week. I'd update your resume if I were you. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, leaving only silence and the faint sound of my heels on marble. In my car, I finally allowed myself a small smile. The game they'd been playing for years had just changed forever. And I hadn't even shown them everything yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was worried, but because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages, voicemails, emails. The Blackwood family network was in full meltdown mode. Aunt Margaret, darling, let's do lunch. Just us girls. Uncle George. Very impressive presentation. Perhaps we could discuss some investment opportunities. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my existence. But nothing from Marcus or Dad. Their silence spoke volumes. I sat in my home office, watching the city lights flicker beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. The view from the penthouse never got old, though none of my family knew I owned it. Just like they didn't know about the tech incubator I'd built in Singapore or the sustainable energy patents I'd acquired last year. The wall of diplomas caught my eye. MBA from Stanford, advanced degrees in software engineering and international finance. All earned quietly while they thought I was finding myself. The latest edition made me smile. A feature in Forbes, carefully framed, but not yet hung. The Silent Billionaire. How one woman built a tech empire in secret. My phone buzzed again. A message from Lisa, my chief operating officer. Board members from your father's firm have been calling nonstop. They want to move the vote up to Monday. Of course they did. Marcus would be scrambling, trying to block the acquisition. But he was 3 moves behind in a game he didn't even know he was playing. I typed back, "Let them. Everything's ready." A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in, James." My assistant entered, tablet in hand. "Ms. Blackwood, you have a visitor downstairs. Your brother." I checked the time. 11:47 p.m. How does he look? Like someone who just lost his kingdom, James replied with a slight smile. Security asked if you want him sent away. "No," I said after a moment. "Send him up. And James, have the files ready." Marcus looked nothing like the smug heir apparent from earlier. His tie was loosened, hair disheveled, that carefully maintained mask of superiority cracked wide open. "How long?" he demanded as soon as he walked in. "How long have you been planning this?" I gestured to the leather chair across from my desk. "Planning what, exactly? My success? Or your comeuppance?" "This is our family's company," he spat. "Dad built it from nothing. You can't just swoop in and take it." "Actually, I can. And technically, Grandfather built it. Dad inherited it, just like you were supposed to. The difference is, I built something of my own." I opened my laptop, turning it to face him. "But since you're here, let's talk numbers. Your management of the firm has led to a 30% drop in value. Client retention is at an all-time low. 3 major accounts have quietly begun moving their assets elsewhere." His face paled. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything, Marcus. Every mistake, every covered-up loss. Every time you blamed your team for your bad decisions. Did you really think nobody was watching?" He slumped in the chair, the fight draining from him. "What do you want?" "Want?" I raised an eyebrow. "I don't want anything from you. I'm offering you a way out. The board votes on Monday. When they accept my offer, and they will, you have 2 choices." I slid a folder across the desk. He opened it with shaking hands. "Option 1, fight me, lose spectacularly, and watch your reputation in the industry crumble. Option 2, step down gracefully, accept the generous severance package I'm offering, and start fresh somewhere else." "Generous?" he scoffed, but I saw his eyes widen at the number. "This is blood money." "No, it's business. The thing you claim to understand so well while mocking my choices. The difference is, I learned from watching Dad's mistakes. He built a company. I built a future." Marcus stood abruptly, the folder clutched in his hand. "Dad won't let this happen. Dad doesn't have a choice. The voting shares are already secured. Would you like to know how?" I pulled up another document, one that made him sink back into his chair. "Remember Aunt Catherine? The one you all dismissed as eccentric. Before she died last year, she signed over her shares to me. Not to mention the proxy agreements I've built with minority shareholders over the past 3 years. Face it, Marcus. It's over. Why? His voice cracked. Why do it this way? The secrets, the planning. Because you never would have taken me seriously otherwise. You needed me to be the failure, the cautionary tale, the sister who couldn't hack it in the real world. It made you feel better about your own mediocrity. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. Monday, I continued calmly. Your decision deadline is Sunday at midnight. Oh, and Marcus? The next time you want to spread rumors about someone's financial status, make sure they don't own the bank you're borrowing from. After he left, I poured myself a glass of the scotch Dad had always said was wasted on women. The same scotch I now owned a controlling interest in, through a subsidiary that had quietly acquired the distillery last spring. James appeared with a fresh stack of reports. Your father's been trying to reach the board members. No one's taking his calls. And the offshore accounts, untraceable, as designed. The shell companies are locked down. Even with their best lawyers, they'd never find the connection. I nodded, scanning the latest projections. Marcus would take the deal. His ego was big, but his survival instinct was bigger. Dad would fight longer, holding on to the myth of his legacy. But in the end, it wouldn't matter. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Mom. Dinner tomorrow? Just us? I smiled faintly. 20 years of missed dinners, of disapproving looks and backhanded compliments. Now suddenly she had time. Sorry, I typed back. Board prep all weekend. Maybe next time. Setting my phone to do not disturb, I turned back to the window. Somewhere in the city, my brother was probably drinking himself into anger or acceptance. My father would be in his study, realizing his empire was slipping through his fingers. And me? I was just getting started. The real question wasn't whether I'd win. That was already decided. The question was how much of the truth I should reveal at Monday's meeting. After all, the offshore accounts were just the beginning. Marcus had no idea about the tech patents, the Asian markets, the renewable energy contracts. He didn't know about the team of brilliant minds I'd assembled while he was busy playing golf with Dad's old friends. A notification popped up on my screen. Another major shareholder pledging their support. The numbers were already well past what we needed, but each new signature felt like vindication. I opened my safe and pulled out one last document, the original business plan I'd written 5 years ago, complete with today's date circled in red. Everything had happened exactly as I'd mapped out, down to Marcus's late-night visit. Some would call it revenge. I called it revolution. And Monday would be just the beginning. Monday morning dawned clear and sharp, the kind of autumn day that feels like a fresh start. I stood in front of my closet, considering the armor I'd wear for today's battle. The choice was deliberate. A black Alexander McQueen suit that cost more than Marcus's first car, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's sapphire pendant, the one piece of family jewelry I'd kept. The board members are all present, James informed me as I stepped into my private elevator. Your father arrived early, trying to corner them individually. Marcus signed the papers last night. Of course he had. Self-preservation always was his strongest trait. And the media? Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, and Bloomberg are all waiting for the press release. The Forbes photographer is on standby for after the vote. I nodded, checking my phone one last time. 16 missed calls from Dad, 5 from Mom. A single text from Aunt Catherine's old secretary. She would have loved this. The Blackwood Financial Group's headquarters took up 30 floors of prime Manhattan real estate. I'd worked here briefly after college, back when Dad still thought he could mold me into his image of success. Now, walking through the marble lobby, I felt nothing but calm certainty. Miss Blackwood, the security guard nodded respectfully, already informed of the changing winds. The board is waiting in the main conference room. I could hear raised voices before I even reached the door. Dad's distinctive baritone carried through the wood. This is impossible. There must be some regulation against. I pushed open the door, and the room fell silent. Every head turned. Board members, legal counsel, and there in the corner Marcus, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Good morning," I said smoothly, taking my place at the head of the table. The seat had always been Dad's. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. "This is outrageous," Dad started, but the board chairman, Mr. Richardson, cut him off. "Robert, please. The votes are already confirmed. This meeting is a formality." I opened my briefcase, removing a single folder. "Shall we begin?" "Sarah," Dad's voice cracked slightly. "Whatever we did, whatever drove you to this, we can talk about it. As a family." "That's exactly the problem," I replied calmly. "You've always seen this as a family business. I see it as a business, period. And right now, it's an underperforming one." I gestured to the screen behind me, where James had pulled up the quarterly reports. 30% loss in value, client exodus, failed expansion attempts, and that's just the surface. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He knew what was coming. The Asian Market Initiative? Dead in the water. The tech division? 5 years behind current innovations. While you were all celebrating maintaining the status quo, the world changed. And now it's time for new leadership. Leadership? Dad laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You abandoned your position here, ran off to play entrepreneur." I smiled, pressing a button on my laptop. The screen filled with logos, dozens of them, representing companies across tech, energy, finance, and real estate. "You mean these companies? My companies? The ones I built while you were telling everyone I was lost. Take a closer look, Dad. See if you recognize any of them." His face paled as he scanned the names. 3 of them were major clients he'd lost recently. 2 more were vendors who'd suddenly raised their rates. And there, right in the middle, was the offshore investment firm that had been quietly buying up Blackwood Financial Group shares. That's not possible," he whispered. "Oh, but it is. You taught me well, Dad. Buy low, sell high, and never let emotions cloud your judgment." I just applied those lessons differently. I turned to the board. "You've all reviewed the acquisition proposal. My offer stands at 40% above current market value, full retention of existing staff except senior management, and immediate implementation of modernization strategies." Mr. Richardson cleared his throat. "The board has already voted. The motion passes unanimously." Dad slumped in his chair. Marcus stared at his hands. "Now," I continued, "let's discuss the future. James?" My assistant distributed new folders to each board member. "These are the first phase changes. Digital transformation, AI integration, sustainable investment divisions. Everything the company should have done 5 years ago." "And current management?" someone asked. "Marcus has accepted a transition package. As for the CEO position," I looked directly at Dad, Retirement benefits are generous. I suggest taking them." The meeting continued, but Dad didn't speak again. He just sat there, watching as his kingdom transformed in front of him. When the final votes were recorded and the papers signed, he stood slowly. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why not just tell us? Would you have listened? Or would you have dismissed me, like you dismissed every idea I ever brought to this table?" He had no answer. As the board members filed out, many stopping to congratulate me, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. Not for what I'd done, but for what it had taken to earn their respect. "Miss Blackwood?" James appeared at my elbow. "The press is waiting." I nodded, gathering my things. Marcus stopped me at the door. "The family dinner," he said quietly. "This Thursday. Will you still come?" I considered him for a moment. "Will there be more announcements about my financial status?" He flinched. I deserved that. "Yes, you did. But yes, I'll come. Someone needs to explain to Mom why her country club membership just had upgraded to platinum status." Later that evening, alone in my office, I opened the safe one last time. Inside was a letter my grandmother had written me before she died. "Don't let them define you," she'd said. "Build your own empire and make it so big they can't ignore it." I smiled, thinking of her, the only one who'd seen past the family's expectations to what I could really become. My phone buzzed, a news alert. The story had broken. Blackwood Financial Group acquired in surprise move. Unknown tech billionaire revealed as founder's daughter. Below it was a quote from a market analyst. "This could be the most brilliant long-game takeover we've seen in decades." If they only knew, the family firm was just the beginning. I had bigger plans. Plans that would reshape not just the Blackwood legacy, but the entire industry. I poured myself a glass of scotch, Dad's favorite brand, now my brand, and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was reeling, reevaluating everything they thought they knew about their failed daughter. But I wasn't failed. I wasn't lost. I was exactly where I'd planned to be. The empire I'd built in silence was finally stepping into the light. And this time, there would be no more whispers, no more doubts, no more need to hide my success. I raised my glass to the city skyline, to new beginnings, I whispered, and to never underestimating quiet daughters again. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight, I would savor the victory that had been 5 years in the making. After all, success is the best revenge. And I was just getting started.